Ava Grace Harrington was 32, worth $4.8 billion, and standing in a crowded Brooklyn coffee shop on a freezing November morning when she walked straight into a man holding a 9-year-old girl's hand. Her latte exploded across both of them, soaking his fire department hoodie and her $5,000 camel coat. And before she could apologize or run away, she heard herself blurt out the most insane sentence of her life. "I need a boyfriend to meet my parents this week, and I'll pay you $250,000 if you say yes right now." The man looked down at the coffee dripping off his chest, up at her with tired, dark eyes that somehow still managed to sparkle, and answered without missing a beat. "Fine, but I'm not sleeping on the sofa. Your guest room better have a real bed, princess." The little girl clinging to his leg looked up at Ava with huge brown eyes and announced loudly, "My dad snores like a freight train, so you probably don't want him on the couch anyway." People around them stopped mid-sip. Phones came out. The barista froze with a pitcher of milk in the air, and Ava felt the floor tilt because the stranger in front of her was stupidly, unfairly gorgeous. Broad shoulders, 5 o'clock shadow, the kind of face that belonged on billboards, not in a coffee shop line. His name was Mateo Castillo. Everyone called him Matt. 38, widowed lieutenant with the New York Fire Department, raising his daughter Sophia alone in a modest house on Staten Island ever since his wife Isabella dropped dead from an aneurysm 4 years ago while folding tiny socks on a random Thursday. Ava introduced herself like they were at a gala instead of standing in a puddle of oat milk latte, and before she could take it back, Matt wiped his hand on his jeans, shook hers firmly, and said, "Deal. But my kid comes with me, because I don't have a sitter for Thanksgiving week, and I'm not leaving her." Sophia already grinning like Christmas came early. Ava opened her mouth to protest, then closed it because honestly, her parents were going to lose their minds either way, so what difference did one sassy child make? They exchanged numbers between the sugar packets and the tip jar. Ava promised a car the next morning, and she walked out into the cold feeling lighter than she had in years, even though her coat was ruined and her dignity was somewhere on the floor with the spilled coffee. She had spent a decade building walls so high, no one could climb them. The tabloids called her the Ice Queen of Manhattan because she never smiled in photos and closed 9-figure real estate deals before breakfast. Her parents, Charles and Penelope Harrington, lived in a world where love was a liability, and the only acceptable currency was legacy. They had delivered their ultimatum at the last board meeting: bring a serious partner to the Thanksgiving Gala in the Hamptons, or we rewrite the bylaws and you lose control of the $8 billion family foundation. Ava had smiled her perfect frozen smile and said, "Of course, Mother, I wouldn't miss it." But inside, she was panicking, because the only man who had ever gotten close was Preston Whitmore III, a tech billionaire who collected women the way he collected companies. He had proposed with a 20-carat diamond and a prenup thicker than the Bible. When she said she wasn't ready, he smiled that shark smile and said, "You'll never find anyone who understands your world, darling." She threw the ring into the Hudson and hadn't spoken to him since. Now it was 24 hours to the biggest weekend of the year, and her only plan was a firefighter she had known for 47 seconds, who came with a daughter and a snoring problem. She spent the day having her assistant clear Matt's schedule with the firehouse, wiring a $50,000 advance so he couldn't back out, and texting him, "Please bring warm clothes, the ocean wind is brutal." He replied with a thumbs up and a photo of Sophia holding a Barbie Dreamhouse suitcase, and Ava laughed out loud in the back of her town car, which she hadn't done in years. Wednesday morning, a black Suburban pulled up outside the little house on Staten Island where American flags hung from half the porches. Matt wore dark jeans and a navy peacoat that strained across his shoulders. Sophia rocked a bright pink puffer jacket and light-up sneakers. The driver loaded 2 small duffels while Matt insisted on carrying Sophia's backpack himself. When they climbed in, Matt looked at the leather seats and champagne bucket and muttered, "Jesus, it's like a spaceship." Sophia spent the ride making the privacy screen go up and down, pretending she was Secret Service. Ava sat across from them in cream cashmere, trying not to stare at Matt's scarred knuckles, hands that pulled people from burning buildings. She asked about his wife, because she needed to know what she was walking into, and Matt's face changed. The humor drained away. He said, "Isabella was the love of my life. One minute she was texting me a grocery list, the next she was gone. Instantaneous aneurysm. Sophia was 5. She remembers enough." Ava felt something crack in her chest because she knew about sudden loss too. Her older brother William had died sailing when she was 19, and her parents sent her to boarding school in Switzerland so they wouldn't have to look at her grief. She reached across and touched Matt's hand for just a second. He let her. Then Sophia announced, "I'm hungry," and the moment folded away. They stopped at a diner off the LIE because Sophia wanted pancakes, and Matt said, "Rich people food starts tomorrow." Ava ate hash browns with them and discovered Matt put hot sauce on everything, and Sophia could recite the periodic table for extra credit. When they finally reached the gates of Harrington House in Southampton, Sophia pressed her face to the window as the driveway stretched forever, and the mansion rose like a movie set, stone and glass perched above the Atlantic, infinity pools steaming in the cold. Sophia whispered, "Holy crap, we're in a Disney castle," and Matt told her language, but he was smiling. Ava led them through the marble foyer where staff took their ruined coats, and she watched Matt try not to look overwhelmed. She showed them the East Wing guest suite, bigger than Matt's entire house, 2 bedrooms connected by a sitting room with ocean views. Sophia screamed and ran in circles. Matt dropped the bags, looked at the king bed, then the plush sofa, and raised an eyebrow. Ava felt her face heat and said, "I had them put a rollaway in the second bedroom for Sophia, but the sofa is yours if you insist." He laughed quietly and said, "I was kidding, princess. I'll take the second bedroom with my kid." Ava felt something that might have been disappointment and told herself that was ridiculous. The first test came at the pre-Thanksgiving cocktail party. Ava in a backless emerald gown that cost more than Matt made in a year. Matt in the only suit he owned, charcoal gray bought for Isabella's funeral, looking devastating. Sophia in burgundy velvet with a bow looking like a tiny queen. Charles and Penelope Harrington waiting in the grand salon like royalty. Her father tall and silver-haired, her mother rail-thin and dripping diamonds. When Ava walked in holding Matt's hand, her mother's eyes narrowed to slits. Ava introduced Matt as my boyfriend, Lieutenant Mateo Castillo FDNY, and Sophia as his daughter. Her parents trying to process a civil servant and a child at the most exclusive weekend on the East Coast. Her mother recovered first and air-kissed while whispering, "We will discuss this later." Then Preston Whitmore appeared as if summoned by evil. 6 feet of Silicon Valley arrogance in custom Tom Ford, kissed Ava's cheek too long and said, "Darling, you look edible." Turned to Matt and offered the bone-crushing handshake. Matt smiled and gripped back harder. Sophia looked between them and announced, "My dad could beat you up," and Ava almost choked on champagne. Dinner seating had Ava between Preston and some hedge fund prince, while Matt was banished to the far end. But Ava watched him charm everyone, telling stories about pulling a cat from a tree and Sophia trying to adopt a subway pigeon. People laughed real laughs, and Ava realized he belonged at that table more than anyone born to it. After dessert, Preston cornered her near the orchestra and said, "Really, Ava, a fireman, how adorably common. When are you coming back to someone who understands you?" She was about to destroy him verbally when Matt appeared, slipped an arm around her waist and said, "Everything okay, babe?" using the endearment for the first time. Ava felt it like lightning. Preston smirked until Matt kissed Ava right there in front of everyone. Not polite, a real kiss that tasted like red wine and danger and made her knees forget how to work. When he pulled back, Preston looked slapped, and Ava decided she was in serious trouble because that kiss was definitely not fake. Later that night, Ava found Matt in the indoor pool house staring at the water. He had changed into warm clothes, sweatpants, and a thermal shirt that clung to every muscle. She sat beside him, letting her feet dangle in the heated water. He said, "Your ex is a dick." She laughed and said, "Nicest thing anyone's ever said about him." Then Matt asked, "Why do you let him treat you like this, like you're a prize horse?" Ava felt the question hit like a punch because no one had ever asked. She said, "Because if I don't play the game, they take away the foundation. William's dream. Kids who grew up like us but without money. If I lose control, it all goes to tax write-off people." Matt said, "Isabella used to say money is just love in a different form. Some people have so much love they turn it into houses and jets, but love is still love." Ava felt tears threaten for the first time in years. Said, "I don't think I've ever had the real kind." Matt tucked hair behind her ear and said, "Maybe it's time you did." Then stood and said, "Good night, princess," leaving her with her heart racing and the realization 7 days might ruin her forever. Thanksgiving morning, the house filled with relatives and photographers. Sophia dominated air hockey, including beating Ava's 80-year-old great-uncle. Matt helped the chef make arroz con gandules and laughed with staff in a way he never did with her parents. Preston cornered Ava in the library and said, "Name your price, everyone has one. Matt and I both know he's here for money." Ava said, "Get your hands off me." At that moment, Sophia burst in holding cookies, yelling, "Leave Miss Ava alone, you jerk," and threw one that hit Preston in the forehead. Matt appeared like thunder. The look on his face made Preston step back fast. Matt took Ava's hand and let her out, while Sophia stuck her tongue out. That night at dinner, Ava sat between Matt and Sophia, stealing mashed potatoes off both plates. Her father toasted family and legacy, and for the first time, Ava didn't choke on it. After fireworks over the ocean, Matt carried sleepy Sophia wrapped in his coat. Ava leaned into him, caught her mother watching with an expression she couldn't read, and decided she didn't care.
That night, Sophia begged to sleep in the big bed because of dragon nightmares. Ava ended up in the middle with tiny feet in her ribs and Matt's arm across her waist, feeling safer than ever. At 2 a.m., she woke to Matt watching her in moonlight. She whispered, "I think I'm falling for you and I wasn't supposed to." He brushed her cheek and said, "Good, because I fell somewhere around the hash browns," then kissed her soft and slow like they had forever, and every wall Ava built crumbled. The next morning, everything exploded because Preston leaked photos of the contract to Page 6 with the headline, "Ice Queen pays firefighter $250,000 to play house." Ava's father summoned them to his study like a king with traitors, slapped the paper down and said, "Explain." Matt stood tall and said, "Your daughter offered money to keep something that matters. I took it for my kid's future, but everything since has nothing to do with dollars." Charles asked Sophia to wait outside, then looked Matt in the eye. "Do you love my daughter?" Matt said, "Yes, sir, I do." Charles asked Ava, "Is this what you want? Someone real?" Ava, crying, said, "Yes, Daddy, it's what I've always wanted. I just didn't know it came in a fire department hoodie." Charles did something Ava had never seen. He cried, said William would have loved this, tore up the newspaper and said, "The foundation is yours, Ava, no conditions. Matt, you take care of her, or I'll have you killed. Affectionately." Ava hugged her father for the first time since she was 12. Later, Preston tried one last time on the beach, but Matt told him, "If you ever come near Ava again, the only board you'll sit on is in a hospital." Preston left and never returned. The rest of the weekend was Sophia teaching cousins manhunt in the dunes, and Matt slow dancing with Ava in the library to Sinatra. Sunday morning, Charles shook Matt's hand like welcoming a son. Penelope hugged Sophia so hard she squeaked. As the Suburban pulled away, Ava looked back at the mansion that might actually become a home someday. 6 months later, Matt proposed on the Staten Island ferry with Sophia holding a sign, "Will you be my mom?" Ava said yes before he finished. They married in their backyard with Sophia in a flower crown and Charles walking Ava down an aisle of red rose petals while Penelope cried into an expensive handkerchief. The foundation thrived. Matt kept climbing ladders and saving lives, and every Thanksgiving they returned to the Hamptons, not because they had to, but because they wanted to watch Sophia chase cousins across the dunes while the ocean roared approval, and love finally won in a world that had forgotten it was allowed to be good.
The first year after the wedding felt like stepping into sunlight after living in a beautiful but freezing museum. Ava sold her glass penthouse on Billionaire's Row and moved into Matt's little colonial in Tot Hill because Sophia wanted a yard big enough for a dog, and Matt wanted a garage where he could finally finish the '69 Mustang he'd been ignoring since Isabella died. Ava learned how to push a grocery cart while Sophia rode on the end begging for Cinnamon Toast Crunch. She learned the names of every guy on Matt's shift and started bringing trays of tres leches on Fridays because his abuela taught her the recipe over FaceTime and told her a real wife feeds her man's crew. She learned love sounded like Sophia yelling, "Mom, I got an A from the bathroom," while brushing her teeth, and like Matt coming home at dawn smelling of smoke and pressing his cold nose into her neck whispering, "I missed you today." The biggest miracle was watching the grief that had lived in that house start to loosen its grip. Sophia stopped sleeping with Isabella's old nursing scrubs under a pillow and started talking about her mom without crying every time. Matt took their wedding photo with Isabella off the dresser and put it on the living room shelf next to new family pictures because love wasn't replacement, it was addition. In early September, the year Sophia turned 11, Ava discovered she was pregnant the morning Matt left for a 4-alarm warehouse fire in Red Hook. She spent 6 hours vomiting, certain she was dying, until 2 pink lines appeared. She drove straight to the firehouse, still wearing Matt's FDNY sweatshirt and sweatpants, walked past the chief, and shoved the test into Matt's soot-covered hand. He stared at it for 3 full seconds, then dropped his coffee and lifted her off the ground while the entire company cheered, and someone hit the air horn so loud windows rattled. They told Sophia that night over pepperoni pizza, and she asked if the baby could be a girl because boys were gross, except Dad, and also could it have her old crib because she was too big now. Ava cried so hard she had to lie on the kitchen floor while Matt lay beside her, and Sophia patted her hair saying, "It's okay, Mommy, the baby's just excited." They decided on Isabella Grace if it was a girl, and William Mateo if it was a boy, because some names carry the people we love forward. The pregnancy was easy until 28 weeks when Ava started bleeding in the middle of a foundation board meeting. Blood ran down her legs in front of 10 stunned philanthropists. Matt made it from 40 minutes away to Cornell in 19 with lights and sirens. Doctors shouted placental abruption and rushed her into emergency surgery, while Matt held her hand so hard she thought bones would break. She woke to a tiny cry and Matt's voice saying, "We have a daughter. She's perfect. She's here." Isabella Grace arrived weighing 3 pounds 9 ounces, with a father's nose and a fighting spirit that belonged to every Castillo who ever lived. She spent 42 days in the NICU,
while Matt and Ava took shifts sleeping in the recliner beside the isolate, learning to change diapers through portholes and praying to monitors. On day 39, a nurse finally let Ava do skin to skin, and that 3-pound heartbeat against her chest taught her why people survive impossible things. They brought Bella home on a snowy January Tuesday, bundled in a onesie that swallowed her whole. Life became 3 a.m. feedings and middle-of-the-night alarms that made Matt bolt upright, reaching for gear that wasn't there. Ava went back to the foundation part-time because they were building a pediatric wing named after the original Isabella. Matt made lieutenant in Manhattan and started teaching probies how to stay alive. They were happy in the dangerous
way that feels too good to trust. Then, when Bella was 7 months old and finally chubby and giggling, Matt got the call no spouse ever wants. 5-alarm blaze in a Harlem brownstone turned illegal SRO. Stairs collapsed on the 3rd floor, and Matt went in anyway because kids were screaming on the top. He got all 4 out, but the roof came down on his way back, trapping him for 11 endless minutes. Ava was at a donut dinner in a gown and heels when her phone exploded with text, "Get to Harlem Hospital now." She left dessert half-eaten and ran through the ER in 4-inch stilettos that clicked like gunshots. They wouldn't let us see him at first because his face was burned and his left leg crushed. She sat in surgical waiting, holding Bella, while Sophia cried into her lap, and half of Ladder 42 filled the hallway in dress blues. The surgeon came out at 4:30 a.m. and said, "He's alive, but it's bad. 30% burns, compound leg fractures, possible brain injury. We won't know until swelling goes down." Ava asked the only question that mattered, "Will he walk?" And the doctor said, "We're going to try our damnedest." The next 6 months were hell no money could buy your way out. Matt spent 3 weeks in the burn unit screaming through dressing changes, lost 40 pounds, skin grafts looked like patchwork. When they sent him home, he was in a wheelchair with a halo brace bolted into his skull, and the first thing he said rolling through the door was, "I'm sorry I ruined everything." Ava knelt in front of him crying and said, "Shut up, Castillo. You saved 4 kids and came home to us. That's not ruin, that's winning." Rehab was brutal. The man who once carried hoses up 10 flights now couldn't stand 30 seconds without vomiting. He fell so many times the PT brought extra mats. Some nights pain was so bad he begged for more pills than allowed, and Ava sat on the bathroom floor holding him while he cried because firefighters aren't supposed to be broken. Sophia stopped talking about school and started having nightmares. Bella learned to crawl following the sound of Matt's speech therapy exercises, saying "Dad, that" like a prayer. Ava learned to inject blood thinners and wrap compression garments and smile when department brass brought disability forms Matt refused to touch. The darkest night came when infection went septic and fever hit 105. Matt looked at Ava through tubes and whispered, "If I don't make it, tell the girls I tried to be the man they thought I was." Ava climbed into the bed, careful of lines, and said, "You listen to me, Mateo Castillo. You do not get to leave us twice. I carried your daughter in my body and you in my heart for 6 months, and we are not done, so fight." He did. Fever broke on the 4th day while Ava slept with her head on his bed and Bella in the crib beside them. When he opened his eyes, Sophia was holding Bella up so her tiny hand could touch his cheek, and Matt cried so hard monitors screamed. He came home again right before Christmas, still using a walker and having nightmares where he smelled his own skin burning, but he was home. The firehouse threw a party on the apparatus floor with a banner, "Welcome back, Lieutenant, even if you're slow now," and Matt laughed for the first time in months. Christmas morning, he crawled across the living room to put Bella's stuffed elephant under the tree, and when he looked up, Ava was filming with tears streaming because love looks like a man who can't walk, refusing to let his baby wake up without Santa. Spring brought victories. Matt took his first unassisted steps in the backyard while Sophia counted like a coach. 10 steps and he dropped to his knees, thanking God out loud. He turned down the desk job because desks were for people who were done, and he wasn't. In May, he walked with a cane for Bella's first birthday, wearing dress blues that hung loose and cut the cake with scarred hands. Ava watched him lift their daughter high while she squealed and thought, "This is resurrection." Summer came hot and Matt started running again. 1 mile, then 3, then 5. He signed up for Tunnel to Towers and told Ava, "If I finish this, I go back on the truck." 30,000 people ran that day, and when Matt crossed holding Sophia's hand and Bella in the chest carrier, the entire FDNY contingent lost their minds. Chief handed him his freshly painted helmet and said, "Your house wants you back whenever you're ready." Matt looked at Ava across the crowd and she nodded, because loving a hero means letting him be one, even when it terrifies you. He returned to full duty in October, the same day Sophia started middle school, and Bella took her first steps toward him when he walked in wearing turnout gear. Ava stood in the kitchen crying into dinner because some happy endings come with scars and limps and nights you never forget.
but they come anyway. That Thanksgiving, they returned to the Hamptons for the first time since everything changed. Charles pushed Matt around in a golf cart telling war stories, while Penelope taught Sophia pie crust and cried when Bella called her grandma. On the last night, Matt and Ava walked the beach. He still limped when tired, but carried Bella on his shoulders and held Ava's hand like he'd never let go. He said, "I thought I lost everything in that fire, but I found more." Ava leaned into him and said, "We didn't find it, we built it, one terrifying day at a time." They watched the moon on the water while the daughters laughed on the dune, and Ava understood love isn't the absence of loss, it's the courage to love anyway, after you've already lost everything once. And that was enough. That was everything. Years blurred into ordinary miracles. Bella turned 6 with missing front teeth and a backpack bigger than a torso, announcing to her kindergarten teacher that her daddy saved the world and her mommy built hospitals for sick kids. Sophia hit 16, all long legs and secret poetry, already accepted early to Columbia because numbers and words both made sense to her. She still called Ava mom without thinking and still crawled into their bed during thunderstorms because some fears stay small forever. Matt made captain at ladder 42, the same house that dug him out of the fire. His limp only showed when it rained, but every probie learned the story of the night Captain Castillo refused to leave 4 kids behind and then refused to stay broken. Ava grew the foundation into something William would have cried over. 3 pediatric centers, grief camps for first responder orphans, a wing at Richmond University still carrying the name Isabella. They fought like normal people sometimes over whose turn it was to take out trash or whether Bella could have a phone at 9. They made up in the laundry room with the dryer running so the girls wouldn't hear. They still went to the Hamptons every Thanksgiving because Charles and Penelope had turned soft in their old age and Bella demanded to chase cousins on the same dunes where their parents fell in love. Then one quiet September evening, when Sophia was 19 and home from her first year of college, Matt came home from shift, kissed Ava hello like he had every day for 12 years, sat on the kitchen floor with Bella in his lap helping her with second-grade spelling, and suddenly grabbed his chest. The heart attack was massive, the widowmaker, the doctors called it later. He was gone before the ambulance reached the corner. Ava did CPR on the tile while Sophia screamed for him to wake up, and Bella stood frozen holding her spelling list like it could bring him back. They couldn't restart him. 49 years old, strong as an ox, gone in minutes from the heart that had carried every one of them for so long. The firehouse carried his casket down the same streets he used to run with sirens screaming. Half of New York City lined the route in dress blues. Sophia walked behind the engine that carried him, holding Bella's hand so tight her knuckles went white. Ava walked beside them dry-eyed, because if she started crying, she would never stop. The funeral was too big, too loud, too many speeches about bravery and sacrifice. All Ava heard was the silence where Matt's laugh used to be. The weeks after were gray. Ava slept in his turnout gear because it still smelled like smoke and him. Sophia stopped writing and started drinking in her dorm until Ava dragged her home. Bella asked every morning if Daddy was coming home from work today, and Ava had to learn how to say no without breaking in half. The foundation kept going because children still got sick and grief camps still needed funding, but Ava did it on autopilot, smiling the same frozen smile the tabloids used to mock. Then one night, 6 months later, Ava found Sophia at the kitchen table at 3 a.m. reading the letters the 4 kids Matt saved had written over the years, the ones he kept in a shoebox in the garage. Sophia looked up with red eyes and said, "Mom, he never thought he was a hero, but look what he did for them, for us, for you." And Ava finally broke. They cried on the kitchen floor the way they had the night Bella was born, only this time there was no heartbeat coming back. The next morning, Ava took the girls to the cemetery on Staten Island, where the headstone read, "Mateo Anthony Castillo, beloved husband, father, hero." And they brought coffee because he hated flowers. Bella put a new Matchbox fire truck on the grass and said, "Happy Father's Day early, Daddy," because she still counted the days. Sophia read one of her new poems out loud about a man who taught the world how to be brave by never giving up on anyone, including himself. And Ava just sat there, feeling the wind that smelled like salt and pine, and realized grief wasn't a wave that passed, it was an ocean you learned to swim in. They started going every Sunday, bringing whatever was in season. Strawberries in summer, hot chocolate in winter, telling him about school and work and how Bella lost another tooth, and how Sophia's first poetry collection was dedicated to him. The foundation created the Captain Mateo Castillo Scholarship for children of fallen first responders, and the first recipient was a little boy from the Bronx whose dad died the same year Matt did. Ava handed the family the check herself, and the mother hugged her so hard Ava felt something inside her shift. Not heal exactly, but settle. 2 years became 5. Sophia graduated summa cum laude and published her first book of poems titled Things My Father Taught Me While Burning. It won awards and made strangers cry on subways. Bella grew tall and fearless and joined the junior FDNY Explorers because she said someone had to keep saving people like her dad did. Ava turned 45 and woke up one morning to find gray in her hair and laugh lines around her eyes and realized she had lived longer without Matt than the 12 years she had with him. It didn't feel fair, but it felt true. On the 10th anniversary of the coffee spill, Ava took the girls back to that same Brooklyn shop, now gentrified with $15 avocado toast. They ordered 3 oat milk lattes because some habits die hard, and when the barista accidentally spilled one across the counter, Ava laughed so hard she cried. The good kind this time. Sophia filmed it on her phone and posted it with the caption, "12 years ago, my mom spilled coffee on my dad and accidentally saved all of us." The video went viral the way only love stories do. Strangers wrote that they played it at their weddings, that they named their daughters Isabella, that they became firefighters because a 9-year-old girl once announced her dad could beat up anyone, and then he went and saved the world anyway. That night, Ava stood on the back deck of the house Matt bought with the money she insisted he keep. The same house where they raised their girls and fought and made up and learned what forever really means. She looked at the stars that felt closer on Staten Island than they ever did from a penthouse and whispered, "Thank you for the 12 years, Mateo. Thank you for the girls. Thank you for teaching us how to keep going when the worst thing happens." Somewhere inside, Sophia was helping Bella with algebra and arguing about curfew the way sisters do. The dog Matt never got to meet was snoring on the couch, and Ava felt him everywhere and nowhere. In the wind chimes he hung, in the way Bella narrowed her eyes when she was determined, in the strength Sophia wore like armor. Love hadn't left when Matt did, it had just changed shape, become something you carry instead of something that carries you. And that was the real happy ending. Not that they lived perfectly ever after, but that they lived, fully, fiercely, together. Spilling coffee and breaking hearts and putting them back together one ordinary, extraordinary day at a time until the story that began with a ridiculous offer in a coffee shop ended exactly where it was always meant to, in a little house on a hill where 3 women who should never have fit together became the perfect shape of home. And if you drove past on a summer night, you'd see them on the porch laughing over something stupid, lights glowing warm against the dark, and you'd never guess the nights they cried themselves empty or the mornings they weren't sure they could stand up again. Because some love stories don't end when the hero dies. They just learn how to keep telling themselves with every breath, every sunrise, every spilled coffee that somehow still tastes like beginning.